Hey y'all, it's your girl Lauren reporting live from Cooper and Sanford at George Stevens Park here in Arlington, Texas. We are Arlington Urban out here with the community, and we're here to celebrate the culture of our people. Big ups to the whole AUME family, where it's always Arlington first.
We own the hood. If you live by it, die by it, then, man.
Okay.
Prince the Producer. All right, Mr. Jim Ross, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for your time. So first, we want to start off with one of our first questions.
Okay.
In Arlington, we like recognition here, right? But media networks always say Dallas when they're describing events that happen here. So we want to know, if you're elected as mayor, is there a way you can find the networks, ban them, or anything if they don't mention Arlington when sporting events are mentioned or are hosted here?
Well, it's difficult to find the networks or ban them when what we want to do is promote Arlington itself. I think the best thing to do is to work on how do we brand ourselves. Arlington has shifted over the last couple of decades from a quiet little bedroom community nestled between Dallas and Fort Worth to one of the largest cities in the country. The problem is we're the largest city that's not a county seat. Fort Worth's our county seat, so we get lost over here. So we have to do better at branding ourselves, and we're starting to see it. You'll hear the announcements when they're talking at the Globe Life Field or at AT&T that we're coming to you from Arlington, Texas, and we're starting to see more and more of that and get more recognition for it.
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I grew up inner city Detroit. I went to school there, graduated from high school there, tried to go to college there, but I wasn't quite ready for college, to be honest with you. So what I ended up doing was enlisting in the Marine Corps. So I joined the Marines way back in 1979 and spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't go back to Michigan because I wanted to be a police officer. In Michigan, economy wasn't doing well. People weren't hiring there. I had an aunt here in Texas that said everybody's hiring in Texas. So I came to Texas for the first time and fell in love with Arlington. Arlington hired me, and I was a cop here in Arlington from 1983 to 1996. And I was part of the first full-time SWAT team. I developed Arlington's own police academy. I spent almost 7 years undercover buying drugs for a living. When I was 35, I finally finished my undergrad, and when I was 36, I went to law school. And I've been practicing law ever since. I have a couple other businesses here and there.
Nice. So you mentioned that you were a former Marine. Can you tell us about your experience during that time?
I was one of those inner city kids who needed the Marine Corps a whole lot more than they needed me. I needed the maturity and the education that they gave me, not so much the academic education, but the real life education. I spent a little bit of time overseas, a little bit of time in California. I loved every bit of the Marine Corps. Part of me still wishes that maybe I should have made a career out of it. But after 4 years, I got my honorable discharge and wanted to be a police officer and move on from there.
Nice. So are you a family-oriented person?
I am. You wouldn't think so by looking at my track record, though. I have 3 ex-wives, but I think I can say I'm one of the world's best ex-husbands. I get along with my ex-wives. We all have big holiday dinners together. I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren that I'm very close to. They all live here in the North Texas area, so I get to see them frequently. And yeah, so I'm very family oriented.
Nice. So going back to your time in the Marine Corps as well, what was one of the biggest mistakes that you had to learn?
Ooh, in the Marine Corps?
Yes.
Biggest mistakes I had to learn was don't be so reactionary. get educated before you make decisions. Know about what you're talking about before you jump into the middle of things. And as a young man, I was very impulsive, and I would jump into stuff, and didn't always work out the way I wanted it to. So the Marine Corps helped me understand that, listen, sometimes it's best to sit back, soak it up, let it marinate a little bit, and then make a decision.
Nice. And that's just good life advice, too.
Absolutely.
So what influenced you to get into politics?
Well, I never, ever, ever thought about being in the politics. And if you talk to my friends who've known me for decades in this city, almost every single one of them will tell you they never thought of me being in politics either. Mm-hmm. Mayor Williams and I are good friends, and I love and respect that man. But we're cut from two different cloths, okay? He doesn't drink, doesn't cuss. I do, okay? But I sat here and I watched what was going on with the city and the progress that he's made with this city in the last 6 years. And I was worried about what would happen to that progress and that momentum if somebody else was to take control of the wheel. And I sat and I waited to see who was going to do it. And then people started asking me if I'd be interested in doing it, and one thing led to another. And the thing I never thought about doing, I started thinking about doing. And I love this city, and I like to say that, you know, it's not about our accomplishments, but it's about giving back and lifting up. And it's time for me to step up and give back more to the city.
I respect that. So outside of politics, what are some hobbies that you enjoy doing?
Well, the hobbies I enjoy now are not the hobbies I always enjoyed doing, because now I'm 60 years old, okay? So I used to love martial arts, and even today I help promote martial arts. I taught martial arts for many years to police officers all over the place. I'm 60 years old now. I don't need to be doing that kind of stuff anymore. My hobbies now is really about spending time with my grandkids and going fishing and things such as that. That's what brings me happiness now, or taking care of those grandkids.
Nice. So we're in this room right now that has a lot of Cowboys memorabilia. Out of all of the sports teams that you represent, though, what would you say is your favorite sports team?
Wow. You're going to put this out there, and then they're all going to be, why didn't you say me? I love sports, okay? Whether it's football, college, or professional, basketball, baseball, hockey, MMA, I love it all. And I love them all for different reasons. You know, my favorite, you know, I've always leaned towards football or MMA, but man, you know, a great hockey game can be really exciting. A great basketball game can be really exciting. The same thing with baseball. So I can't turn any of these teams against me, because I love them all.
And how did you get to represent like all of the organizations that you represent, such as the Texas Rangers, Dallas Mavericks, and Dallas Stars, and others? Well,
it's not really a representation. We're the official law firm partner, which means that I do business with those organizations. I'm a big believer that when we want to measure our success, we don't look at how much money's in the bank, how many employees I have, or how big our business is. We measure our success based upon our relationships. And I was just building good relationships. The Rangers came to me one time, because I own a restaurant as well, and we were feeding the ball players, and the Rangers came to me one time and they said, hey, listen, we had a sponsor vacancy come open. Would you be interested in a part of a season to put your name on the outfield wall? And I thought, oh, I don't know. Well, I did. And you could see when people are Googling you why your name's on that outfield wall. So my name gets on the outfield wall. The Rangers and I finish that season, and then we negotiate the first 5 years at Globe Life Field, and we name the level with the suites the Jim Ross Law Suite level. So you'll see the law firm all over there. In the middle of all of that, the American Airlines Center, the Stars and the Mavericks see my name over here, and then they call me. So I go talk to them, we strike a deal, and the same thing happened with the Dallas Wings and Texas Live and all of that. So it's not about being the best law firm. It's not about representing teams. It's about developing those relationships. I learned after the fact that there's law firms that have tried to get to where we're at with these teams, but they're unsuccessful because their reputation is different. And they like the fact that I'm a veteran-owned business, that we deal with integrity and honesty, and they came to us, so we did it up.
Wow, it's a major title to have as well.
It's pretty cool.
What are some of the biggest issues in Arlington that you want to address?
Right now is getting through this COVID mess. This pandemic has really hurt our city. It's hurt every community in the country, in the world. We have to get through COVID, but we have to do it safely. We have to make sure that we protect our community from the health dangers associated with this, but we also have to make sure that we protect our community economically. So the most important issue is to get through COVID, keeping our businesses open, but doing it in a safe manner.
And so speaking of COVID-19 and the pandemic, how do you feel that the city responded to COVID-19?
Arlington has been stellar. I mean, absolutely stellar. Our fire department has stepped up like there is no tomorrow. Our city leaders have stepped up. We've gotten testing going. We've gotten vaccinations going. If you look and compare us to other communities here in North Texas, we're far ahead of the game. So I cannot say enough about how great our city has handled this.
And also, how do you think the city responded to the recent winter storm?
I think the city responded well. I think our state did not. We have some issues with how things were done. Now, the state issues overflowed into the city issues because there's a lot of people that lost power here. But our city got out trucks quickly. We started sanding roads. We started getting the salt out. We started doing those things necessary. We really mobilized and started trying to restore power as quickly as possible. I'm afraid that the biggest issues that came as a result of how our state was handling things, not how this community did.
Mm-hmm. And so just regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the winter storm, how do you feel Mayor Jeff Williams did during his performance as mayor?
The way I measure one's success when you look at these community leaders like Mayor Williams is, are we better off now than we were nearly 6 years ago when he took office? And I think that's a resounding yes. We are far better off now than when he took office. Would I have done every single thing the exact same way? Probably not, because we are two different people, just as you and I are. But this man has put his heart and soul into this city, and he set his business aside to do that. He suffered financially as a result of that because he loved this community. And you can't fault a person for loving the community the way he has. I'm one of his biggest cheerleaders. I think he did a really, really good job.
Nice. And so how do you think that Mayor Williams handled the pandemic and the recent winter storm as well?
Oh, yeah, the same response. Mm-hmm. I think our city's response to the pandemic and to the winter storm was spearheaded by Mayor Williams and his attention to detail and making sure that we got everything in the right place at the right time. So I thought he did a wonderful job.
How do you think about the performance of the new police chief, Al Jones?
Well, Chief Jones hasn't been here long enough to really get a big performance rating yet. I've had the pleasure of meeting him on a couple of occasions. He appears to me to be a very nice, incompetent man. I've looked into his credentials. I think he is going to be wonderful for this city. I'm excited about him being here. He seems to be what Arlington needs right now. So I'm stoked about that. I think it's a good thing. But he's only been here for a few weeks. Yeah. So I don't want to say he's done a horrible or a wonderful job. He's doing exactly what I think a really good police chief should do. And that's getting his feet wet before he starts implementing a lot of changes. It's understanding what's going on within the city's police department. And I think he's gonna prove to be a great choice.
Me too. So a little bit tougher question. People have some concerns about your strong business ties to the city. Should Arlington residents have concern that you're running for mayor for increased business ventures and personal gain?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was hoping you would get to something like that. So there was actually someone that commented something like that on my Facebook at one point, right after I entered. Was that you?
It was.
Was it really?
It was me.
That's so cool. I'm so happy you did that, and good to meet you in person. So I responded to you with that. And I think I responded the same way I just started here by saying it's a good question. So my business has grown and become successful. It's successful now. My restaurant's successful, my law firm's successful because I know how to build and nurture relationships. I don't need the mayor's job to make my business successful. It's happened. In fact, I'm the only candidate in this race that has this type of success already. There's virtually nobody else that's a real business owner. They may have a small business, but they haven't experienced this success. If anybody else is going to benefit, it's going to be someone other than me. I have to take my successful businesses and stay away from them and get away from them. I'm already a partner with everybody out here. It's not like I'm going to get more partners for being mayor. Yeah. I'm already doing work with the Rangers and the Stars and the Mavericks and American Airlines Center. And I'm doing work with these folks because they know what kind of person I am, and I them. So people can expect me to put the same type of energy into this city that I put into building my successful businesses. That's what they can expect from me. Because I want to build and nurture the relationships within this city. In order to make this city grow, I have to build relationships. Now, what does that mean? That means I have to build relationships with small business owners. I have to build relationships with the community, with all parts of the community, the wealthy, the poor, the black, the white, the Hispanics. I have to build those relationships with everybody, because the most important thing for any leader is that you do it with integrity. And every part of those relationships have to feel me. They have to believe that my word is my bond, and I'm going to bust my tail to do that. So, yeah, I don't need the mayor's office to build my businesses. My businesses are doing just fine. What I need the mayor's office for is to help this community get to the next level.
Nice. I respect that. So win or lose this election, do you see yourself involved in politics in the future?
I've always been involved in politics, at least from the standpoint of being outspoken enough to say I support this person or that person, and voting and giving money and things such as that to campaigns or charities or whatever I believe in. So nothing's going to change. I'm going to continue to be that kind of person, win or lose. And I intend on winning.
Yeah. So another kind of tougher question. A Star Telegram article by Kaylee Broussard came out about Jerry Warden and his history with law enforcement a few weeks ago. You filed a complaint against your opponent to deny his chance to run for mayor. How did you obtain this information about his criminal record?
I do my due diligence. The city takes the four corners of your application when you file to run for public office and you sign a declaration that says the information I'm giving you is true. And the city has no legal obligation to investigate anything. They don't check to see if you're a registered voter. They don't check to see if you're a resident in this city. They don't check to see if you're a convicted felon. I do, because I want to make sure that the people running for the office of mayor or city council meet those requirements. I found that Mr. Warden is a two-time convicted felon. He was released from his parole after serving time at TDC back in 2009. That makes him eligible to vote. It does not, in my opinion, make him eligible to run for public office. Our state ethics code says that you have to either be pardoned from the felony by the governor of this state or otherwise have the disqualifying event, such as the conviction, removed, like an expungement. That has not happened. The evidence that I submitted to the city that it hasn't happened was the fact that Mr. Warden is still a registered sex offender who was verified on November 18th of last year by the Arlington Police Department. If he was pardoned from his crimes, he would no longer have to register as a sex offender because it would not exist any longer. Does that make sense? And while the city secretaries wrote me a response, and I appreciate that, they said that I provided ample evidence to raise a fact issue, and that they were not obligated, or it's not their job essentially, to do any investigation. So absent anything else, Mr. Warden will be able to remain on the ballot. He drew the #1 position on this ballot. And I have problems with that. Not that I'm worried about Mr. Warden taking any votes. I'm confident with my ability to articulate my positions and to get votes. But I have issues with the integrity of the election process when you allow convicted felons to remain on the ballot contrary to state law.
I respect that. And so for other candidates as well, did you do any research on them or just make sure that everything else was in place as well?
Of course I did.
Awesome. All right. So on March the 2nd, Governor Greg Abbott announced that he was rescinding the mask mandate and capacity restrictions in Texas. What are your thoughts on the governor's announcement? So
I'm a believer that we have to phase this process out. We have an obligation to each other to take care of each other and to protect each other from this pandemic. I think when we look at what Governor Abbott is saying, is he's not saying you can go out and not wear your mask and just run crazy and go wild and all of that, because he's saying, I'm going to leave it up to the Texans to do the right thing. I'm going to leave it up to the businesses to do the right thing. Now, we personally still require masks in my law firm and the restaurant and everywhere else because I think it's still necessary. CDC guidelines say it's still necessary. So I think we have to be careful not to get the cart before the horse. Sorry, that's an old saying. Yeah. Okay? Not to get the cart before the horse and start opening things up too quickly. People need to really understand what Governor Abbott is saying. He's not saying it's safe. He's saying we have now gotten to the point where we can rely on each other to do the right thing. He's still recommending people wear the mask. He's just not mandating it now. So I would stick with Governor Abbott's recommendation and continue to wear the mask.
How do you feel about the city's response to the lift of the restrictions?
Well, the city is obligated to do what the governor says and what the county judge says. City doesn't get to make up their own rules about the mask stuff unless they're talking about a city building or something like that. They can mandate certain things in city buildings. So that was proven when other cities started to try to do things different than what Governor Abbott had ordered, and then the state of Texas sued them and won quickly, saying you need to do exactly what the governor put out there. So we are a part of the state of Texas. So our city has to go along with what's happening. But our city has also been very good about education when it comes to the pandemic and putting stuff out that talks about the importance of social distancing and masking and vaccinations and getting people vaccinated.
Exactly. So moving into some more community-based issues, most of East Arlington is made up of Black and Hispanic people. How can leadership prevent gentrification while still making sure that the area is receiving needed renovations?
Wow. I like your questions. I've done a bunch of these. You got some good questions. So if we've read the Equity Council's report, there's a lot of information in there about our misgivings on how there's issues of diversity within jobs and small businesses and wage earnings and parts of the city, all kinds of things such as that. We now have some things available to us that were never available before, or we will in the very near future. And one of those things is our Economic Development Corporation, where we will be funded about $17.5, $18 million a year to help small businesses. Our African American population is about 22 to 23%. I think it's around 22.9 or something like that. But when you look at African American owned businesses, you're talking about 1% of our African American owned businesses here in town. That's embarrassing. We need to set protocols in place that provide the opportunity for ethnic minority business owners to open up their businesses here and to do it in areas that they may live in or that they want to get to help take care of other people of their culture. And we're going to be able to do that with our EDC monies and eliminating some of the restrictions that's required right now with city processing and getting permits and planning and zoning and things such as that.
Exactly. So when can we maybe expect to see like those changes and the money, I guess, coming into those communities and business owners?
A lot of the type of changes that were recommended in the Equity Council's report are going to start being implemented soon, even before the election. Mayor Williams and I have talked, and he is bound and determined to start implementing as many changes as possible. Some of them are going to flow over into the next term for the next mayor to continue that. And that's one of the reasons why we need that consistency to get these changes implemented. Now, the reality of it is, out of the 59 recommendations that were in that 132-page report, not all 59 recommendations are recommendations that the city has the capabilities to implement. Some of those recommendations deal with health. Some of those recommendations deal with education that may fall within the school district or other ways. But there are a number of recommendations that the city can and should take actions on immediately. So whatever isn't in place, if I become mayor, I'm certainly going to continue the efforts started by Mayor Williams to implement them quickly.
Yes, and it's important too for other candidates to make sure that some of those recommendations are upheld.
It certainly is important. I'm going to be candid. I was disappointed last night because we had an NAACP of Arlington's debate last night. I learned in that debate, because one of the questions was, if you were to become mayor, what recommendations, if any, would you implement from the Equity Council's report? And there were at least 2 candidates who participated in the debate who had not read that report. And it is shameful that you're running for mayor of the 11th most diverse city in the country. I was the only Caucasian there, and these 2 people were African American and had not even bothered to read the Equity Council's report. That is shameful. You have an obligation to the minority citizens in this community to educate yourself if you want to be mayor. Yes. So.
I totally agree. So speaking of some more community-based issues, we're going to move into music. So Arlington Urban actually has a music platform here as well that we support local artists, mainly hip-hop. The city of Arlington is known for supporting more local artists, though. For example, singer Maren Morris received in a proclamation from Mayor Jeff Williams. How could popular artists from Arlington's hip-hop culture, such as Splurge, Cincy Molly, Two Tone, The Vibrant, No Joe Wallace, Grindhard Snap, there's a whole list that we have, Newbie Mac, Measy Maine, how can they receive the same support from the city?
Okay. I'm going to be candid. You named off a bunch of artists I ain't never heard of, all right? Now, if you want to talk about Aerosmith or Journey or something like that, I'm down, I get it. Here's what I know, okay? I love music. And I am envious of true musicians and artists who have the capabilities of performing like I'm sure all these artists that you just named off on. I've been blessed with having K104 here in this building. And I've met a bunch of people, the DJs, everybody are friends of mine in this building. The producers are friends of mine. I love the music. Anything I can do to help promote that music environment, the cultural aspects of that, I would want to do. Because it's not just about the music, but it's about exploring each other's culture. Hip-hop music is part of a black culture. It is. And it's an important part of that culture. And we need to embrace those things so that we all can do it. I'm a fan of, and here's one of the things I want to get going with, is we have the east side of town that is full of African Americans and Hispanics and Asians and Africans, Nigerians, all kinds of people like that. And we need to celebrate those differences. Let's put these cultures together and create an international cultural festival and explore those things. Let's bring in the different musics. Let's bring in the hip-hop artists. Let's bring in the Tejano musicians. Let's eat different foods. Let's enjoy those things, because one of the most important things for us to be comfortable with is understanding our differences. Because when we begin to understand our differences, what we really are learning is we don't have a lot. We have a skin color. We have a few cultural differences. But we're all part of the same race, and it's the human race. And we need to embrace that. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what ethnicity you are or how old you are or what your gender is. I want to be mayor for everybody. And if I've learned anything throughout my 60 years of doing crazy things, from being a cop to a Marine to a lawyer to a restaurateur to whatever, I've learned that we're stronger together than we are alone. And I don't care if it's just talking about you and I standing shoulder to shoulder fighting off somebody. We're stronger together than alone every single time. And we need to embrace our cultural differences. So that was a long way of saying, let's do it.
Yes.
Let's embrace that music. Let's get it going. We have some of the best black artists ever. Kurt Franklin lives here. He has a studio here. You find me another gospel artist that's better than him, Lord, there isn't. You know, he's the man. So I'm all about it.
I think that cultural festival, it'll be very fun as well, so we'll learn a lot.
It'll be great. I mean, who doesn't want to learn? Man, I want to bring us together like that.
So moving into some different issues, aside from COVID relief, what are some plans that can help small businesses across Arlington grow? You mentioned the bill that's coming in, or the
EDC,
yes.
yeah, Economic Development Corporation.
Yes.
So we have an EDC last November that was, the voters voted on to fund it with a 1/4-cent sales tax. That's going to fund it with about $17.5 million a year that's going to go into there. And those monies can be then used to help attract, help encourage new small business. See, my thought is this. Arlington has done well building the entertainment district out here. It's beautiful. I enjoy baseball and football and Texas Live and Six Flags and everything associated with it. But we have a reputation of not doing so well with small business, whether you believe it's based in fact or fiction. And we need to change that reputation. We need to attract ethnic minority-owned businesses that are proportionate to our diversity here in the city. We need to build our African-American business. We need to do it in a way that not just gets business here, but helps business be sustainable, okay? I have some ideas on how to get there. I don't always want to share my ideas because I've learned in this campaign stuff that other candidates then start saying, oh, I got an idea, and they start coming up. But I do have some great ideas on how we can streamline things specifically to make things so much easier to come here in Arlington and do business. When we treat developers in such a way that we sort of axe a development that they want to come in for whatever reason, we're not just losing that development. We're telling them, don't come back here for any more. And we need to be building those relationships with those developers that want to come here in Arlington, that want to put in the right type of businesses or structures or office buildings or whatever, and build this thing, especially over on the east side of town. Our city is landlocked. We don't have any growth that's going to go out like that. But we have a lot of revitalization and redevelopment area that is in desperate need. And it can happen.
Yes. Awesome. So let's see. One of our next questions is going to be about business owners and taxes as well. It says Arlington residents and business owners have expressed their frustration about the increase in taxes. Do you have any solutions that can help lower taxes or maybe even decrease concern amongst residents and business owners?
So property taxes is an issue every single year. Nobody wants to pay a lot of property tax. The property tax rate in Arlington under Mayor Williams has decreased every year for the last 5 years. But property taxes go up. Why is that? Because our tax rate may decrease, but the value of the properties continue to increase, which is going to cause you to pay more taxes. So we feel that. And we feel like, you know, you tell me the tax rate's decreasing, but they're still charging me more and more every year, and they're right. We just lost $20 million approximately because of COVID. When I say we, the city has just lost $20 million. I'm going to be candid. The ability to decrease property taxes right now is going to virtually be non-existent. We'll be lucky to keep them steady because the city isn't going to have the money. They're just not. However, our city has been operating in a position of being upside down on where the tax money comes from. The majority of our revenue is coming from residential property taxes. Shouldn't be like that. The majority of our revenue should be coming from corporations, and we haven't been attracting enough corporations. So the way we get our taxes to permanently start doing this and coming down is we increase that corporate tax base. We increase it so that we're getting the majority of our money from the corporations, not from our residents. Because there's three essential ways we get the monies: sales tax, corporate tax, residential property tax. And we need to start shifting it so that our residential property tax isn't carrying the load. That's what people feel, is that it's carrying the load. I listen to some of the other candidates talk about it, but they don't have an understanding of how that tax rate works. They also don't have a full understanding that the majority of the taxes that you and I pay on our property taxes doesn't come from the city. It's coming from the state and the county and the school district. That's where the majority of the taxes are coming from. Yes. Or going to, I should say. So the city is the smallest portion out of all of it. So it's an overall picture of how the taxes are done, and we have a small portion of it.
Yes, that's good information too. So even if you see like your bill or something, sometimes you can see it.
You could see it. If you'll take time and look at it, you'll see that it's not just the city of Arlington taking all this money. You'll see school district and county and everything else in there. And you'll see that it's really not the city of Arlington that's taking it all.
I know, I think like I saw the school one time and I was like, oh, that is a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
So moving into some questions just about the Arlington Unity Council study. According to the 2021 Arlington Unity Council study, Black people were pulled over by Arlington police and ticketed about 37.5% of the time. Black people make up only a small portion of the population here in Arlington. This is an ongoing issue for many Black people, including myself and others, that we continue to deal with. If elected, how can you as mayor solve this disparity?
This is an issue that, because I'm a former police officer and I'm a 60-year-old white guy and I look like I'm part of the establishment, that you get stereotyped that there's no way I could really understand those cultural divides. But because I'm a former police officer, I can tell you I do understand it. I acknowledge, and it took a while for me to do this, I acknowledge that there is cultural suppression that happens with ethnic minorities in law enforcement. I sponsor and support professional fighters. I have a 28-year-old black guy that I've sponsored for years. He's now with the UFC. And great fighter, Kevin Holland's his name, and Kevin has tattoos all over him. I have a nice car. I have a pickup truck, but I have a nice car. I can go down Division Street at 3 o'clock in the morning, and assuming I'm driving straight and I'm not acting like a drunk, the odds are pretty good that I'm not going to get pulled over because I'm a 60-year-old white guy wearing a suit. I can take Kevin and put him in that car and have him drive the exact same way at the exact same time. And guess who has a greater percentage of getting pulled over? Because there is cultural suppression there. And it was a tough pill to swallow when you're a guy that you look back at things in hindsight and you say, wow, was I part of that? Because we all look at ourselves and we don't think we have the ability to be prejudiced or biased. Those are evil words that we don't want to associate with ourselves. But I think they're words that are applicable to everybody in every way. And there's ways I think we can start to move beyond that, and one of those ways is what I've been talking about in bringing people together to share our cultural differences. To see that, you know what, if you're going down the street and you're black, or if he's going down the street and he's black, that you're no more likely to do things that if I'm going down the street and I'm white. So that people don't begin to look at us differently because of our skin color. And it's not going to happen overnight, because we didn't we didn't get to where we are now overnight. So this isn't going to happen overnight. It's tough. I'm a trial lawyer, and when I'm picking a jury for a trial, one of the things we have to do is we have to tell people, listen, we need to see if you have a prejudice or a bias against one side or the other in this case. And people always, you know, I'll ask a question like, does anybody have any prejudice or bias against my client? Nobody raises their hand. And I said, okay, well, let me ask a different question. Has anybody ever eaten liver and onions? Now, I grew up in Detroit, but my parents are from the South, and they cook liver and onions. I hate liver and onions.
No, I love them.
I can't stand the smell of it. I can't stand the texture. I can't stand the taste. I can't stand anything about it. And I said, now, how many of y'all hate liver and onions? And you know, a lot of people hate liver and onions, all right? So then I start talking about, well, what if this case was about liver and onions? Would you be able to tell the judge, you know what, Judge? I have a prejudice and bias against liver and onions. Doesn't matter what the experts say, doesn't matter anything. This case is not best for me. And when you start relating our prejudice and bias to how we have preconceived notions about liver and onions, how we have preconceived notions about Brussels sprouts, how we have preconceived notions about football teams. I can say the same thing for the Eagles in Texas. A lot of people don't like the Eagles.
Yeah.
But we have those biased and prejudiced. And when we're talking about food, it's okay. When we're talking about teams, it's okay. But when we're talking about ethnicity and cultures and gender and sexual preferences, it's not. And it's not for people in the city to feed those prejudice and bias. It's for people in local government to help people get together to embrace our differences, no matter what they are culturally or anything. So, sorry that was a long one, but that was an important question.
That's for sure important. Another study that the Arlington Unity Council did was about the use of force against different races and ethnicities. And the study, it shows that white people had firearms pointed at them about 343 times, Hispanic people about 373 times, Black people about 589 times. What do you personally believe could be a cause of this disparity?
Fear and a lack of understanding of cultural differences. I mean, it just is. We call it like it is. You know, is you fear what you don't know. And if I don't understand your culture, and when I say culture, it's not just the color of your skin. It may be your dress. It may be your music. It may be whatever it is. If I don't understand it, I start to develop some type of fear for it. Not that you're just so fearful you can't see straight, but I think that's where it is. That's why we have to change that atmosphere, educate each other, come together in an international cultural festival, and let's learn and celebrate each other's differences. And let me learn that it's okay that if you're an 18-year-old young Black guy, that if you want to wear your hair a certain way or your pants a certain way or a certain type of shirt, doesn't mean you're a gangster. Doesn't mean you're anything but a young 18-year-old kid. And that's okay to be, you know? And once we start doing that, then we start feeling that difference. And when white people get educated about Black people, and Black people get educated about Hispanic people, and Hispanic people get educated about Asians, we're going to start to see that difference. We all have a tendency to stay in our own culture, and cops have their own culture. even the black cops or the Hispanic cops or the Asian cops are still cops first and black second. Here's what I mean. When I was a cop, we all hung out together. The black cops, the Hispanic cops, it didn't matter. We were cops first. And being a cop first, we didn't care what color our skin was. But if you can take that similar concept and say we're humans first, then we help smooth things over on that. Cops is another culture. Our skin isn't the only thing that dictates our culture. Our look isn't the only thing. I mean, there's a lot of cultures and subcultures within cultures and all of that. So we have to embrace the differences.
Exactly. Going back to just one last policing question, in your Mad Radio interview with John Solreno and Sam Hortwitz, you were very honest and upfront about your history as an officer and the current culture of policing. Considering the overwhelming support you've received from many different police organizations across Arlington, how would you address concerns regarding your ability to hold the police department accountable for clear cases of wrongdoing?
So here's what I think could happen, okay? The most important thing in dealing with police wrongdoing is transparency. That's the most important thing. If the citizens of this community see a very transparent police department with an open and honest record of here's what happened and here's what we're doing as a result of it, then you help eliminate a lot of the problems associated with that. So how do we keep things transparent? The answer is not a civilian oversight board with investigative or subpoena authority. That's not the answer. Because I'm not a technician. You have cameras here and everything. So let's say the people running your cameras mess that up. And we're like, we just ruined the whole show. So we're gonna put a bunch of people, oversight, that doesn't know anything about these cameras to decide what they did wrong. It's not the solution, right? It's not an oversight. Now, it's a simplification of police misconduct because nobody's going to get killed. But police misconduct needs to have a civilian oversight board of some sort, but you don't need investigative or subpoena authority. What you need to be able to do is say, we've looked at what happened. We're educated, because you have to educate that group of individuals about police use of force, state laws, policies and procedures. You have to educate that group of people. And then you have to say, here's what we've done, here's the disciplinary action, give us your thoughts. And then they have the ability to kick it back or not. Or they have the ability to say, we concur with this. That's what you need, is transparency. And the kicker of it is, I'm endorsed by all 4 police associations because all 4 want the transparency. They're okay with it. They're okay with it. But you don't need the city council doing that, because we're a bunch of elected officials who may or may not have their own agenda in there. We don't need the elected officials doing it, and you don't need civilian oversight that has that type of subpoena authority. That's why we hired people like Chief Jones. He's the expert. He knows how to put people in place to make sure that the police oversight within the police department is appropriate and transparent.
I feel that. But how do you feel, I guess, about police policing other police?
I think it's outstanding. And I think it's necessary, because it's not just police policing other police. It's not like we're just taking care of our own, but there are so many steps that are taken in internal investigations against police officers, because the Internal Affairs Department has a supervisor. They make a report, they report to the supervisor. The supervisor takes it to the deputy chief. Deputy chief takes it to the assistant chief, and the assistant chief gets it to the police chief. And you have so many layers that are on there, and it's incredibly important to have those layers, but having those layers also gives good oversight into what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Let's see. And then just one more question about crime as well. Overall, crime across Arlington has decreased, but violent crimes are rising. How can you coordinate with Chief Al Jones on fixing violent crime issues?
One of the things that Chief Al Jones and I have in common is a passion for community-based policing and bringing law enforcement and community leaders together to say, listen, crime fighting is not just a police issue. It's a community issue, and we have to come together. There used to be a lot of crime watch programs, things such as that Neighborhood Watch, that aren't as functioning now as they used to be. And we need to implement those type of things. We need to get back to the day where you knew who your beat cop was. You knew who your beat cop was, that you could call your beat cop and say, Joe, I got this weird guy walking around the neighborhood. He doesn't belong over here. And Joe can show up and do something about it. And that's what we need to do, is get back to the neighborhood policing. Get people who know their cops, know what their beat cop is, know when their days off are, know when they're doing it. And when that happens, you start seeing a change in neighborhoods.
Nice. So moving into an education question, what are your stances on alternative paths for students who don't wish to pursue a college degree?
Well, I'm a big believer in we have a right of free choice, okay? I have some kids that pursued college degrees. I have some kids who did not. I support them no matter what. People have to decide what they want to do. Really, do you want to be a musician? Do you want to be a carpenter? Do you want to be a pharmacist? Do you want to be a mechanic? It doesn't matter. But what is important in this community is we provide enough options and alternatives to people that they can pursue whatever it is that they want to pursue. If they want to be a car mechanic, then we provide them the best opportunity to get that certification that they can get. So when they get out of high school, they have certification and they can get right into a garage somewhere and start working on the cars. If they want to be an airplane mechanic, we can help them get to that certification as well. If they want to go to college, we can certainly help them get into college as well. So I think we're doing good when we have like the Dan Dipert Center down off Pioneer Parkway. If you haven't been in that place, it is phenomenal. And they have everything there from the culinary stuff, teaching kids how to cook, teaching kids how to weld, teaching kids how to work on cars, teaching kids how to do what you have done here with cameras and set up studios and recording things. That's amazing. We're one of the few school districts that really have put something together like that. AISD and Arlington, we continue to struggle with being innovative and bringing our kids up in a way that is really enhancing our school district. And are we at the point where we want to be now? No, we're not. But remember, we're still the 11th most diverse city in the country, and we have over 400,000 people. This is a work in progress, but we're going to get there.
I hope so. Okay, so moving into just some housing and rental questions as well. Arlington's apartment rental rates and cost of living have increased over the past decade, even though pay wages have not increased. If elected, would you make housing more affordable as a priority?
Yeah, I certainly would. But that's not a one-dimensional type of response to that question, because making housing more affordable means that we have to address our development codes and our housing codes in the city to make sure that we can build the housing that's more affordable. But we also have to address our wage earners, because we want to make sure that they're earning enough money to afford the properties necessary as well. So it's not a one-dimensional approach of decreasing housing. It's a multifaceted approach of making sure the education is getting better, making sure our wage earners are getting more money, and making sure that we address all of our building codes and everything so that we can do a better job at allowing people to build the type of places that they can afford.
Exactly. And so where would you start with that as well? You mentioned like looking at building codes. What would be, I guess, like a first step that you could put in place if elected to help with housing?
Well, one of the big issues is when apartment developers or other type of multifamily developers are wanting to come in, they're looking for the green lens, the inside of Arlington properties that haven't been developed on yet. And we need to start exploring how we can do things to help the revitalization or the redevelopment of some of the existing communities in there, whether they're being torn down and redeveloped or whether they're being remodeled and being redeveloped. But we need to start exploring things such as that. We also need to make sure that if you're living in a small 1,000 square foot home or 900 square foot home, but you want to tear it down and rebuild there, some of our codes don't allow you to build anything bigger, or they won't allow you to build anything small like you have now. You may be grandfathered in at 900 square foot, but if you tear it down and want to rebuild, then you have to build a 1,500 square foot home. Well, people may not be able to afford a 1,500 square foot. So if you already have a 900 square foot home, you should be able to rebuild another good 900 square foot home. And those are some of the coding changes or the laws that we need to look at how we change those things.
Exactly. Those are some good first steps. And just one last question for you as well. If you were elected, where do you want to see Arlington by the time that you leave office?
Oh, better. And what is better? I don't know, because I honestly believe the sky's the limit. I want Arlington to be the place that people are fighting to get to. They're fighting to come here and live and raise their kids and retire and open businesses and to visit. And we have that potential. We have great momentum. We really do. Jeff Williams has created some good momentum in this city. And we can't lose that momentum, because getting that momentum back is so incredibly difficult. So we have to push forward. We have to make sure we maintain the momentum.
Exactly. And then just a couple last questions. We do have some community input questions.
You've already said one last question, and now you're coming back.
It's like our last Arlington Urban question.
You're just like a lawyer.
I know.
Okay?
All right, so just 3 of our community-based questions. Our first one is going to be from Arlington Urban Viewer and Arlington Rapper, Free Game Griff. He asked, what would make your time in office unique if you were elected?
Ooh, what would make it unique? I'd be the first Arlington cop ever to get elected as mayor. Wow. And that's unique in and of itself. I bring a very blue-collar work ethic to a white-collar job. My dad had a 10th grade education. My mom had a high school education. And I grew up very, very blue-collar. And regardless of how much money I make or how much money I don't make, that work ethic has never left me. So I would bring that work ethic. I would bring that beat cop experience and that attitude to the office, and that's what would be unique.
Okay. Our next question is going to be from Arlington Urban Viewer D. Powell. She asked, how do you plan to incorporate the city's plans of creating local markets, access to safe and inclusive spaces, and community hubs for people of color to feel welcomed in the downtown Arlington area?
That's a really good one. I love the viewers. So there's, I'll give you an example. There's been a piece of property over here at Sanford and Collins for a long time. It's been undeveloped for like a decade. Old building, used to be the Vandergrift Buick dealership. I've helped work with other people to get with the property owner and developer, bring in other investors and stuff to create sort of a downtown urban farmers market down there called the Vandy Project. And it's those type of things that are hip and trending. Is hip still in? Can I say hip?
Yeah.
Okay. We say that back in the 70s, but those are the things. I'm sorry if I use old people language, okay? But it's those type of things that are hip and trendy that I think goes across all the cultural bounds, because you bring in businesses like a farmer's market that has outdoor restaurants and retail shops and stuff like that, that people, regardless of their ethnicity, like to come to. When you create those environments in the downtown area, you encourage people of all races and ethnicities to get together. And when they start getting together, we start learning. And when we start learning, we start accepting, and we start loving.
Exactly. And then this question is from Liveable, Arlington. It says, in the years since gas drilling started, a lot of peer-reviewed research has been done pointing to serious health issues from living next to drilling. Many Arlington residents have serious concern about living next to fracking pollution. What steps will you take to address this public health issue?
Arlington is very good about ensuring that all of the studies are done properly before any drilling is done. And I would encourage people that have those concerns to look at the requirements for that. I have met personally with some of these drilling experts on this matter. We're very good about making sure we're protecting our community. That is always first and foremost. Has there been other problems throughout Texas? Absolutely there has. Is it something we need to maintain a concern about? It is. But we make sure for everything that is drilled in this city, all of the experts are in place to know exactly what's going on. All the studies are done, and we make sure the communities have stayed safe here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I do have one last personal question. Sorry, I know, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
What's your favorite thing to eat at your restaurant?
Ooh, so I have two things. So you're never going to get this. All right, two things. First of all, I like steak. So the filet mignon is phenomenal. But I also like seafood. And if you like a sea bass, we have the absolute best sea bass ever. And without a doubt, it is incredible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you want to say to our viewers, where they can find more information about you or anything?
This was one of the most fun interviews I've done. I love this. Thank you.
Thank you.